The Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Blockchain Super Conference is coming to Dallas, Texas, February 16, 17, and 18 in 2018. If you know of a better way to get the latest insider knowledge about crypto, to hear directly from the top minds in this field, to interact personally with 800 fellow crypto lovers, hodlers, investors, miners, traders, developers, and founders, then I'd like to hear about it. If you don't, then you don't want to miss out. Register today for the Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Blockchain Super Conference. Go to bitcoinsuperconference.com and register today as a super early bird to get the lowest rates on tickets and hotel rooms. That's bitcoinsuperconference.com.
Welcome to Almost Here, Round the Corner Future Technology podcast with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies poised to transform our lives for better or worse are the focus of this podcast. Almost here means these technologies are now here and starting to be used, or just around the corner, from Bitcoin to artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with Future Tech Podcast. I'm talking with Erick Miller, the founding CEO of Coincircle, a pretty high-profile guy, and he's going to be one of our speakers at the upcoming Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Blockchain Super Conference in Dallas, February 16th to 18th, so I'm looking forward to having him. Erick, how you doing?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and, not to demean other guests, but you have a pretty crazy background, so if you don't mind, tell me a little bit about your background first.
Thanks a lot. So I got started doing technology startups back in the dot-com days in the late 90s, early 2000s, and that was really the beginning of my career. And then I started, and I worked in technology. I was really passionate about computer graphics, and worked in technology there as a technical director, writing a lot of different software. One of the pieces of software I wrote was nominated for a Technical Academy Award, which was kind of cool. And that was a muscle and skin simulation system. And then I started this company that, I sort of had this vision to reinvent the future of computing. And so that was around 2010 when I first started working on that. And it was started building a visor that had a computer in it and optics with displays, as well as some smart glasses. And I had this sort of plan to just completely change the paradigm and the modality and of using a computer so that it was entirely wearable. And then around 2011, Google Glass got announced, and Oculus Rift came out, and we're sort of, my startup had raised some money, and where the whole industry just sort of formed. And then that company ended up getting sold to Snapchat as Snapchat's first acquisition, and out of that came the Spectacles product that Snapchat made. So it was kind of an interesting and fun experience, and it's kind of cool today even to I'll walk into T-Mobile or something, and there's all these VR headsets on the shelf, and I kind of played a part in creating the spark that ignited that industry at the beginning. So that was kind of fun. I started a small venture firm called Hyperspeed Ventures, where I invest in radical breakthrough technology that leads to emerging technological megatrends. And so I've invested in everything from quantum computing to space, rocketry, microsatellite, genetic engineering, electric flight vehicles, and a number of other really cool companies. And one of the companies I invested in is called Unikoin. It's founded by the prior founder of Voodoo PC, and who also created Microsoft Ventures, my friend Raul. And Unikoin is an esports platform for wagering on the outcome of video games. And then through the conversations with Raul and sort of, I've been involved in Bitcoin since 2011 when I first discovered it. I started mining it because it was kind of the only way you could get it back then was to mine it. And I was so curious about this new peer-to-peer digital currency. So I started mining Bitcoin in 2011. Didn't make it a full-time job mining it, but even at my last startup company, the one that I told you about, we had some miners running on our video processing servers. We were even mining Dogecoin at one point when Dogecoin first came out. So we were one of the first startups I knew about that accepted Bitcoin for the sale of our glasses, actually. And stuff like that. So anyway, so then I'm talking to Raul and I'm telling him about Ethereum and like the ICO stuff, and we started chatting, and it was like, wow, Unicorn should do a token, and should do a token sale. It would be really cool. And so that's kind of the inception of Coincircle and how Coincircle came about, which is the company I'm currently the CEO and founder of. And so Raul and I started working together, and we came up with this concept of doing a digital token for esports wagering called Unikoin Gold. And we did that, and we launched that project together, and I created Coincircle in the process. And we were the main advisory firm, but we also have a team of engineers that wrote the smart contracts and built the token for them. We have a growth hacking team that helped them do the marketing and PR. We helped bring in a large amount of capital into the token sale, and as well as Ethereum and Bitcoin to buy the Unikoin Gold. And then we built the token, and we launched the token, and we wrote all the code that distributes the tokens to everyone's wallets. And in the process, Unicorn sold like over $30 million worth of with Unicorn Gold, and we wrote smart contract code and token code that created like about $300 million worth of value, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and so that's basically my story.
All right, so you invested in many ventures. I know Unicorn Gold. I guess in full disclosure, I participated in the ICO, if anyone cares. But yeah, looks
cool.
like a great venture.
Thanks.
What is the main premise of Coincircle? Is it just to find promising technology and invest in it, or is there other ventures that it's involved in?
Yeah, so what we do is so we're building a lot of underlying technology to help support the process of building and transacting digital tokens, and then we work with established companies that have that typically we work with post Series A companies that are already well capitalized, that have a credible, proven, vetted team, that have an existing product or service with a growing network of users that may already generating revenue, and then we look for opportunities to integrate a token into their business model. So have the product or service be able to utilize a digital token. And so by creating token mechanics, using smart contracts that can sort of interface with their product, or portion of their product becomes decentralized, we then are creating software that creates additional value for the customers, for the users of the product or service, that creates additional value for the companies, and that is also in the process of doing a token sale becomes a form of non-dilutive financing for the company, or really just revenue for the company. And then in doing so, create a lot of extra value for everyone. And so that's essentially what Coincircle is doing. And then we're creating and supplying a lot of the underlying technology to help support the utilization of that token within the company's product or service.
Well, what's the I have my own opinion of the climate right now. I don't I'll give it to you, but I want to hear your opinion. I mean, it seems like there's been tons of ICOs. Everyone's fishing in the same pond and expecting the same group of people to invest in all these ICOs, and I feel like it's drying up, and I feel like it's getting tired and exhausted. So what's it like from your perspective right now? What do you see the ICO market doing, and where's it going?
Yeah, so I mean, we took this, upon sort of the inception of the company, we took this position where, I felt that way the entire time that we were, the way that you're describing, kind of the entire time, even as we were starting the company, and the reason why is because, there's a ton of projects that aren't very credible. And they just continuously are popping up. And, there used to be a lot of scarcity around if someone was launching a new token. And now it's like so common that, you have to really do a lot of diligence on the project itself and just really kind of understand that aspect of it. There's also a lot of interesting market dynamics that are occurring right now in terms of just like the volatility of the overall crypto market, and then the combination of like, the sort of pair trading that happens between different cryptocurrencies, and sort of what happens when Bitcoin has a huge spike, you can kind of see it between, if you just look at like Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, for example, there's just like weird dynamics now that are happening. And kind of like if you look at the price of Ether, and then when there's like a big ICO, you can see these really interesting pair dynamics happening. And so there's a lot of like, interesting things that are happening within the crypto market that aren't necessarily normal because of the dynamics between the different currencies. And then, you're kind of hitting this long tail of tokens where, it used to be a day on the internet when when there were only like, a few hundred or a few thousand websites, right? And I kind of remember back in the 90s when, you could almost, you could have the internet indexed on like a single web page, and it was a big web page, but you could literally like almost every website was like on that single page, right? And you could just click through all the links and go, oh, here's all the pages on the internet. I mean, the concept of that happening today is just completely like, mind-boggling. There's so much data on the internet that, you have to have a company like Google to even have a chance of finding something that you're looking for. And so I think we're starting to hit the beginning of the long tail of the token market where, the Amazons and the Googles and the Facebooks of sort of tokens will start to emerge. And I don't think that it won't be like a winner-take-all kind of thing, kind of like the internet is, but tokens themselves have this really interesting, there's a really interesting analogy and parallel to be had with, between sort of like the emergence of the internet and then the emergence of blockchain and cryptocurrencies. And I see the decentralization, like the next version of the internet will be decentralized, and it will be operating on a sort of Web 3.0 completely decentralized internet where projects out there kind of like Etherworld today where you like nobody owns that. It's sort of like a public good, and it's sitting out there, and anyone can write a really, really lightweight JavaScript interface on top of it. So there's not like a single place that it may actually exist. So it's like this decentralized web, it's like this decentralized internet is starting to emerge, where there's not necessarily a server for, it's just all on the blockchain. And there's a token attached to it, and then the token itself you can derive value from that. And so when you start to like tie together the different cryptocurrencies and what they do and how the smart contracts operate, so what kind of value those create, and you evaluate that and you look at like which ones are going to create the most network effects, then you start to sort of imagine many of them will be much bigger than others, and we're all still learning that right now. But I think that we're at just the very beginning stages of what's currently like I think last time we talked it was like $100 billion market. And today it's like a $200 billion market, right? And that was just like a month ago or something. And so I'm like incredibly bullish about the entire space. And I mean, it's very clear to me that this is easily a multi-trillion-dollar market in the next 5 years. And so that doesn't mean that every single project is going to be a good project. And so part of what we do at Coincircle is work only with sort of like the best quality teams, and we work with we build projects that we believe will be like very successful in the long term, basically.
So what are some of the characteristics you think of a good project that can succeed versus just a mediocre one or one that's not going to do well?
I mean, so there's indicators, and then there's sort of attributes of the way that the token works itself.
Yeah, maybe both.
I think
talk about both.
Yeah. So I think generally, like indicators are the quality of the team, their past ability to execute, things like that. Also, the market that they're operating within, sort of like what's the growth potential of the market that they're operating within. Sort of if it's a really small market, then there's probably not, the token itself won't transact that much. And people won't, not that many people will be interested in purchasing the token. So that's also another thing. And then also just like how well capitalized is the team that's doing it already? Like, are they doing a token sale because it's a way for them to try to get money, or are they building in the core, at the core of what they're building, is it like a passion to create like a piece of decentralized technology that could be like transformational in the way that it operates? And so those are all kind of like indicators, right? So if someone approaches us and they, it's clear that they're just like, oh my God, this is such a great way to raise money. Like we're not interested in working with those types of companies because, that's not the nature of what we want to build. The nature of what we want to build is like, building something that's the future of the internet. And we don't see it as much as a form of financing as we do as a way to a really cool way to sell a new utility that's like decentralized, that has a currency attached to it, has a token attached to it.
Whether you're invested in them or not, what projects are you excited about that you're seeing out there? You made a couple examples.
Yeah, totally. I mean, guess there's a bunch, but like, I mean, so I think Filecoin is really brilliant. I think that's a really great, I mean, it's like, the decentralized Dropbox, and I mean, I think they have a really cool, I think that's a great one. I think Civic is really cool. I think that Augur and also Gnosis are really cool projects. What's the Golem? Golem is really cool. I mean, there's a whole bunch of them. So I mean, those are some that are out already. And
okay. It seems like now in a lot of the sub niches in crypto, I mean, there's competition. So you mentioned Filecoin. Well, there's storage, there's Siacoin, there's a few others, and it seems like in every corner of crypto now, there's 4 or 5 companies trying to do the same thing. Whether it's medical data or tracking shipments, et cetera. It seems like they'll, at some point they can't all succeed. I mean, do you think there's a shakeout coming, or how do you think things are going to go over the next year?
Yeah, I mean, so there's definitely like competition between different tokens, and I mean, I honestly don't really know how things will go in the next year in terms of, I think the better projects will succeed, and that comes down to execution typically, execution and like product market fit, kind of, I guess if you could call it that. I think in the future, I kind of imagine the situation where there could be like cryptocurrency wars as a form of competition. Like if you're first to market, so the space has network effects. So if you're first to market, and you build like a large market cap, and you have your token's worth has like a significant value to it, and you're holding a decent, if someone's holding a decent amount of those tokens, they could liquidate a small percentage of those, use those to buy a competing token, and then just like dump it in order to crash the price at strategic times, right? I mean, so it's like there's like these really weird things that could start to happen, like in terms of like how do you compete? Like you could never do that with a private company, because you would never let a competitor like invest in your equity when it's clear that they would have that they could potentially have nefarious. So anyway, I see a future where this type of thing starts to happen, and I think it might be happening a little bit right now. And I mean, even if you look at the dynamics between Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, so there's definitely interesting dynamics happening between different currencies, and I think there could be. And I've heard someone, I can't remember who it was. It might have been Vinod Khosla, but somebody had said something like, the future of warfare is economic. And then I've heard other people say the future of warfare is cyber. And I think cryptocurrency is clearly the convergence of cyber and economics, right? It's crypto economics. So I think there's going to be crypto economic warfare kind of that starts to happen. And, and truly, actually, I think we're already entering into the sort of, at least the indicators exist that'll start to happen. You start to see all the different sort of players on the global chess, making these global chess moves. You've got China shutting down exchanges, and you've got Dubai and Singapore issuing their own state-run blockchains, and Japan legalizing cryptocurrency, and Australia declaring that Bitcoin won't be is tax-free, and countries Gibraltar are spinning up all these very ICO friendly regulations, and
well, that's what I want to ask you. War by and between who? And it sounds like countries.
Well, I mean, it's just well, right now that's how we think of things. I think in the future we'll be living in a completely borderless world, but I don't know how long that'll take to get there. But I think decentralization is the path towards that happening, and it's sort of self-governance. And so anyway, it'll be interesting to see how this pans out, because at some point regular money will become just so hyperinflated, and a lot of people think that the measure of inflation, if you measure inflation against Bitcoin, of the US dollar against Bitcoin, it's ridiculous. If you measure even if you just take the net value, the average value of all fiat currencies, and you measure it against Bitcoin, then inflation is incredibly real. And so the question is like, is that why? There could be some black swan events where like the U.S. dollar. I mean, I don't want this to happen, but like this could happen, like where the U.S. dollar is unseated as the global reserve currency.
Right.
And then China has been constantly accused of economic or some sort of like currency manipulation and things along these lines. And so there could be some really kind of crazy things that start to happen. As China sort of moves into the cryptocurrency space, because the fact that they started outlawing and banning exchanges, and that there's rumors that they're developing their own state-run currency like solution, so a cryptocurrency solution. I mean,
right.
I've heard rumors that the Fed is also looking into this. So there's a lot of interesting things that could start to occur that may not be fully predictable by people, just based on the dynamic outcomes that the dynamics of the global system. Like nobody really understands macroeconomic dynamics, and you enter, then you add like the variable of cryptocurrencies into this, and that I think that creates a lot of unknown, unpredictable circumstances.
Well, I know no one knows, but what are some of your guesses about what else may happen? I would think you have a unique perspective. I mean, where do you see things going? 6 to 12 months, do you think you're going to be big upheavals, or as if we don't have enough?
I mean, I think generally that, like, I'm not sure about that, but I think that I think that programmable money is the future of money. And so I think that like Ethereum and smart contracts was the first time that ever really existed with a platform model, a decentralized platform model, where it could be start to be utilized on a larger scale. And we can see the success of that, of how that's worked out and how that's working out. And so I think the concept of programmable money is incredibly powerful and so enabling and cool that like in the future, that's what money will be. And so the ability for anybody to issue their own digital tokens is such a huge thing right now. Like we're at the very beginning of a multi-trillion. I think it's actually like in the relatively medium term, it's like $100 trillion opportunity, like in the next 10 years or something. So the ability for people to create their own digital tokens, and that can be used, that have a utility, that can be traded between other, for other tokens, could be something that, is something that will be the way that all value is transacted in the future. And if you think about it, like, the sort of like virtualization of everything in the world is something that's like a trend that I don't think will ever stop at this point. So more and more data will be, just like digitized. More and more objects, the more things that we can do with our phones and with our computers. So, transacting that's been a thing for a while now. And so, as we start to represent things like more and more in the digital world, and cryptocurrencies start to tie into that, and we can attach value to those sort of digital assets, and then transact between them. Use that value to transact, other value on the other side of that. So we're basically like trading tokens for other tokens. Then that just like creates this really cool method it's a non-zero sum sort of economic scenario where you're just creating huge amounts of value and not like you're not losing any value anywhere. So like, when we build a token for a company, we, like I said, with Unikoin, there was like $300 million of value that was created approximately at the time of the token distribution. And so, that's value that like didn't exist previously prior to that. And if you think about that, that's really phenomenal. Like that's economic value that was just created I don't want to say out of thin air, because we worked really hard to build it,
right.
But but it was really value that was created based on based on like the ability for those tokens to transact on Unikoin's network and to work within their software and their product. And so if you think about all the opportunities like that, if you like think about, Starbucks has their own token, and Amazon has their own token, and McDonald's, or, I don't know, the different places have their own token, and you can walk into those, and there's an application that can just sort of trade those tokens for other tokens, and you're just holding all these different tokens, and companies are using them as loyalty reward points and issuing them to all their customers, and and then the customers are going and then transacting there and trading other tokens, and it creates this sort of situation where in the future digital tokens could become the solution for sort of the problem of the automation economy, like where we have this problem with artificial intelligence potentially in the future automating everything that everybody does. And I think that we'll move into this future world where that will happen, right? And so then how do people actually make money? Like, does that change the acquisition of value, right? Like the ability for people to buy things and still live happily. And so I think that the ability to create programmable money and the ability for sort of everything to get tokenized, all assets in the world to get tokenized, and then transacted will be a major part of solving that problem. And I think there will even probably be like AI that's running on the blockchain that will be like issuing tokens and stuff like that as well. And it's going to be a really interesting future in that regard. But this problem of the automation economy where AI automates everything and nobody has the ability to earn any money is really a major problem that we're gonna face in the future. And I really do think that programmable money has the ability to solve that problem.
What do you think it's going to take for crypto to become widespread, where it's taken by Starbucks and it's taken by it's taken everywhere? How far out are we, and what's it going to take?
It's hard to say exactly, but I think you can sort of study things like market adoption. There's like this thing called the diffusion of technology, where there's different like formulas that can predict these things. There's the concept of crossing the chasm, where there's a certain amount of there's like different stages of market adoption, and then once you hit like sort of a critical mass, then something becomes like mass market. There's this thing called like the hype cycle, where something gets really, really overhyped and then it hits this sort of reality of what actually can happen, and then it sort of drops off this cliff in terms of like and then then there's a time frame where it takes the actual time for the adoption to happen. So there's a whole bunch of different technology based sort of trend adoption or like technology adoption frameworks that could be referenced in order to try to predict this. But I think that cryptocurrencies are very different in regards to most of the attributes that exist within them. I mean, there's really powerful network effects. There's never been a market that's existed. There's never been a market that's existed that's like had all of the attributes that cryptocurrencies have. So we're really operating in a new space. And some things could slow it down, like really aggressive regulations could cause friction that could slow down the adoption. And then so could on the flip side of that, like a huge number of like fraudulent, really poorly run projects could also slow down the adoption of that. So then the appropriate amount of regulation could potentially increase could optimize the adoption. And it's hard to say, but I think in the next 10 years, like the concept of money will be completely transformed in anyone's minds. That like anyone that's born within the last 10 years will like in the next 10 years, like they won't even think of like paper money as being money. They'll think of like their phones or like their mobile computers or whatever form that takes as being like where their money is stored and how they transact. And most likely that'll be in the form of cryptocurrency.
How people bank, how do you think that might change?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to say. It's like I don't think banks are going to disappear necessarily, but I think that like the role that banks play will be very different, because obviously blockchain creates a disintermediation and no requirement for the sort of trusted third party that a bank has always acted as. But like when it comes to there's certain things that really are necessary. So like from like an integrity and like a sort of ethical perspective, so like anti-money laundering laws are really important because they stop sort of nefarious actors like child smugglers or like other really bad actors like terrorists or something from being able to sort of launder money in ways that it becomes untraceable. So I think that like there's still going to be like laws and regulations around knowing your customer and anti-money laundering, and I think that that's never going to go away. And so I think like the way that sort of that, but see, the thing is like most of these technologies, most of these things can actually be moved onto the blockchain and decentralized. So like every sort of role and function that a bank plays eventually can be sort of decentralized and utilized as a service with blockchain technology. So it's hard to say. I mean, it's really hard to say. But I think what's like more interesting than like what'll happen to banks is like how we can use blockchain technology to actually solve a lot of our social challenges. And that's also a really interesting topic.
Oh, all right. Well, maybe one example of a social problem that you think blockchain technology could solve feasibly.
Yeah, totally. So what I mean is like basically, we're and I was talking about this sort of problem of the automation economy earlier with these sort of AI, and like I think about the future a lot. And one of the things in the future that definitely concerns me, and I think probably concerns anybody that is paying attention, is the pollution and the global warming and sort of like all of the environment, like the basically like the environmental challenges that we have in front of us. It's the planet that we live on is facing a huge number of sort of climate and pollution and like massive issues with like overpopulation and there's a mass extinction event that's going on where species are dying at a faster rate than ever recorded in all of human history, where there's and most people aren't aware of these things, or they sort of turn a blind eye. We're hitting temperatures that are like record highs in like as far as we have recorded history in all of like the time that we've ever been able to measure temperatures. And there's floods. Like I used to live in Houston, Texas when I was a kid, and there's like floods that are flooding like massive parts of cities that I just would have never expected. We've never seen something like this before. So rising sea levels and air pollution and water pollution, the ocean's populations are the population of fish is rapidly declining, and I mean if we pollute the oceans and overfish, we will literally kill the planet. And so like we have these really big challenges in front of us, and I think that technology is the way that we can solve a lot of these challenges. And really, really interestingly, if you look at what caused, like, so there's this really complex dynamic system that exists on the planet Earth with human beings just like doing all these things. And obviously we produce waste as humans and stuff like that. But if you look at the root cause, it's sort of like the framework that created these problems. It's all based on incentives that are structured around economics. And so you can look at like what drives everyone's behavior is economic. Like you can tie that back to economics. And so now with cryptocurrency, we have this really cool new thing called crypto economics, where we can do things with cryptocurrency that you can't actually do in a like real world physical economic framework. And so you can build crypto economic models that have incentives tied to them, and when those those incentives, you can have smart contracts that measure, that theoretically measure data that can cause the certain things to happen that will increase the value of a token, for example. So like one scenario is, and I talked about this at the Blockchain Summit on Necker Island too, to a whole bunch of people, and lots of people got excited about this idea. But I came up with this concept called like crypto impact economics, where you can sort of take the attribute, take the problem that you want to solve, and then find out a way to measure it on a local scale or on sort of on a larger scale, and then take that measurement data and then tie that to to the ability to reduce the supply of a token, and then sort of like incentivize the surrounding ecosystem, kind of like in a game theoretical way, where you can incentivize all of the sort of players that are contributing to this problem or that can help solve the problem with tokens, and then sort of like create this scenario where as the problem is reduced, the value of the token is increased. And there's a bunch of different ways you can do that using smart contracts. You can burn tokens, incrementally. You can, there's a bunch of ways to sort of like cause the value of a token to be increased. And so then if you can sort of, so we came up with this concept called the climate coin, that I wrote a very brief white paper on just to sort of explain it to people. And we're going to be putting that up on Coincircle's website soon in an impact section that we're working on, because I think like impact is a really important thing to focus on, because it's really literally the future of our world, and it's the future of like everybody that exists on the planet. And the climate coin has this concept where it measures it uses the air quality index and the ocean health index. And one of the guys that worked on the ocean health index at the World Economic Forum helped write the white paper, and is working on this with us part time. And so
cool.
The idea is, sort of measure there were two tokens in the climate coin that get issued, and it's like a 2-token model, kind of like a Gnosis or one of the other projects. And then you sort of like those tokens get issued, and based on the overall sort of pollution supply that exists in the world, and then they're valued based on like the overall amount of value that would be required to replace the current polluters in the world. So basically, then they're sold in the initial coin offering at a price that represents that value per token. So they'd be sold to like philanthropists and stuff like that. And then sort of the price of the token is set, and there would be like a really huge reserve. So I mean, we're talking about like hundreds of billions of dollars of market value that would have to be replaced. I think it actually was like maybe trillions of dollars. I have to look at the numbers again. And then what happens is then as the air quality, so then all these players in the world, like all these people would be granted the token, but they wouldn't be able to transact with it yet, but they'd be able to sort of track the value of it, and they'd be able to see what their net worth is currently. And then as all these people that have this token start to work together to accept the token, so like charitable, so like the different like conservation groups would start accepting the token as donations and not accepting dollars anymore. All the different players that would be incentivized to clean up the environment would all go and start working to clean up the environment. And as the air quality index increases, the value of the air quality token increases, and as the ocean health index increases, the value of the ocean health coin increases. And so then that creates this really like sort of perpetual cycle where, as people are working together to clean up the world, like we're creating more value in the value of the tokens than what the current polluters in the world are valued at. And then you could do some really interesting things where people can start like short selling the whoever's polluting the world, and you start short selling the polluters stock and stuff, and just sort of crash those markets, and then continue to increase the quality of the earth, basically, And so that's kind of, so I think like stuff like that is really, really interesting to me, because like that's the stuff that like crypto economics really enables, and on a mass scale. And so when I say tokenize the world, like I'm not just thinking about it from like a greedy sort of capitalist perspective. I'm thinking about like how can we create a better world, and how can we do something that's like really meaningful with cryptocurrencies to help to create a better planet, basically.
Well, that's great. Well, very good. So what's we can go on for a long time, but what's a good way for people that are interested to talk with you or share ideas or propose a project to get in touch with you or with Coincircle?
Yeah, so you can go to coincircle.com, and there's a form at the bottom where you can sort of talk about what you're interested in, and you can send it that way. And we haven't officially launched the site, but we do have some information on there about sort of what we do, and we have a wallet technology that we've deployed. We have a chat application that we've deployed, and we're working on some really cool new technology that we'll be announcing soon. One of the things that we're working on is a token that we'll be selling at some point that we haven't fully announced. I think that if you go to the website, you can click on it. It's called the CircleCoin, and it's a really cool. It's basically a collection of all the token sales that we do. We take a portion of those tokens that transact through the Coincircle platform, and we put them into the CircleCoin. So it will be perpetually collecting more and more tokens over time. And we're really excited about that. And so we'll be doing a token sale for that at some point in the future, probably sometime next year.
Oh, very good. So that token will be an amalgamation of the value of all the investments you've made, essentially?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, exactly. It really will be a reflection of the growth of our platform. So as we get more and more companies that go through Coincircle's, platform that we're building, then as they transact through the platform or as they do ICOs through the platform, then the CircleCoin will be collecting, in some cases small percentages of token, in some cases larger percentages of tokens, and they'll all be going into a smart contract that's held by the CircleCoin. And so when we distribute the CircleCoins, everyone's CircleCoin will actually represent a percentage of tokens that will be constantly growing as the Coincircle's platform grows.
Okay, well, very good. Well, Erick, thanks for coming on the podcast, and looking forward to having you come speak and to hear more of your wisdom and see what's going on. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I'm looking forward to the Bitcoin, Ethereum, cryptocurrency super conference. It should be really cool.
The Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Blockchain Super Conference is coming to Dallas, Texas, February 16, 17, and 18 in 2018. If you know of a better way to get the latest insider knowledge about crypto, to hear directly from the top minds in this field, to interact personally with 800 fellow crypto lovers, hodlers, investors, miners, traders, developers, and founders, then I'd like to hear about it. If you don't, then you don't want to miss out. Register today for the Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Blockchain Super Conference. Go to bitcoinsuperconference.com and register today as a super early bird to get the lowest rates on tickets and hotel rooms. That's bitcoinsuperconference.com. You have been listening to Almost Here, Around the Corner Future Technology podcast with Richard Jacobs. Subscribe to this podcast, post a review to discover more future technologies that are poised to transform our lives for better or worse, such as Bitcoin, artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.